let's do this past paper. Okay, so the first question: tick one box to identify a method used to design and construct a solution. So let's just talk about all of them. Okay, so the analysis stage is so these there's they mentioned a method, not the stage. So the analysis stage just means to take an overlook of the problem. The coding stage means to develop the problem. The flow chart is a method to represent. So the correct answer is of course C. All right, so C. But testing is the basically it's going to be is another stage in which we just test the code base, make sure that it's working properly. Draw one link to each of their symbols. Okay, so let's just talk about all of them. Okay, so let me just bring out the pen. Okay, let's just bring out the pen. Okay, alright. So the first gate right over here, this one is going to be an OR gate. So we already have an OR, so let's just bring it up here. Alright, that's an OR gate. The next one is a NOT gate. Now we don't have any NOTs here, but this is just generally speaking, this is a NOT gate. Okay, so just remember that. The next thing that we have is a okay, this is an AND gate. Okay, this is an AND gate. Then we have an XOR gate, and then we have a NAND gate. There's also the NOR gate, which looks a bit something like this. So the NOR gate, it looks something like this. All right, so remember this. This is what a NOR gate looks like with a dot at the end. And yeah, that's basically, I think that's all of them. That's what the NOR gate looks like, or and not, yeah, I think that's all of them. All right, so that's it. Okay, so that's the first 4 or 5 marks. Okay, identify 3 different tasks. Okay, so I told you guys about abstraction and decomposition. That's the first thing, abstraction. So we don't need to go in depth. They just said identify, so we don't need to go in depth. Abstraction, so and then decomposition, and then of course the entire thing behind it. So identification of problems and the identification of requirements. So abstraction was to eliminate unnecessary details. Decomposition was to break down a problem into smaller subproblems. Identification of problems was to take a general overview of the entire problem at hand, and identification requirements is the things that we require from the program. Next, we have program needs to make sure the characters input for meet these 2 rules, blah blah blah, how it would check. Okay, so the first check would be the length check. Okay, so the first check that they asked would be the length check. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to write that we're gonna use a length check to make sure the product code is 6 characters in length, or the product code string is 6 characters in length. That's for the first statement. Okay, the second statement is going to be a format check. We're gonna use a format check to make sure that the leftmost 2 characters are PD. Okay, that's gonna be the second check. The third for what do you say for this one? All right, the third one is going to be okay, the last 4 characters. Okay, last we're gonna use a range check to verify, to validate. We're gonna use a range check to make sure the last 4 characters are within the 1000 to 999 range. Okay, we're gonna use a range check. Okay, so that's basically the types of range checks. There's also just generally speaking, there's also the check digit. There's also type check. Right, so there's a bunch of them. Okay, so just remember them all. All right, so this is okay. So when we're talking about writing them in what do you say? This, okay. So all we have to do is we have to write repeat we're gonna do 1 2 3 4. Okay, so repeat input product, all right, until length of product is equal to 6. That is literally it. That's 2 marks right then and there. Then you have make sure the first 2 characters. Now this was the question I was talking about. So it's just gonna be repeat. This is the format check pseudocode which they don't often give. So just look. Okay, screen. Okay. 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 So we're just gonna do repeat. We're just gonna do repeat. So this is the format check question that I was talking about, the one that came in my paper. So this is just gonna be repeat. You're going to what do you say? You're going to input product until substring product 1 2 is equal to PD. Alright, so that's the format check right then and there. Then you have the next question. Alright, so a high level programming language makes use of arithmetic, Boolean, logical operators. Give an example and how each operation is used. Okay, so in this question, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna talk a bit about it. Okay, so the use of arithmetic is to used in calculations. Okay, an example of an arithmetic operator could be A is equal to B plus C. Okay, or you can do multiply, divide, whatever. Okay, that's an arithmetic operator. A Boolean operator is used in conditions. Okay, remember, like A and B, B and C, and so, or used for operations with true/false values. So an example of this would be A is equal to B and C. Okay, that's an example of this. Or you can say if A and C. This is a much better option actually. This is just this is a much better way. Okay, so if A and C. Okay, then you have okay, then you have logical operators. So those were the greater than ones. So you can say used in comparisons. And an example of that is going to be if A is greater than C, or if A is greater than B. Alright, so that's basically it. That's the most freest 6 marks that you can get. Alright. Numbers are input. The number 999.9 is the last number to be input and is ignored. Write an algorithm in pseudocode. Okay, so like I said, most of the times they're going to tell you the last number to be input. Okay, screen. Oh my god. What the fuck? Okay. Why are you bugging? Why are you bugging? Okay. Swear to God, if this bugs one more time, I'm gonna kill somebody. Okay. So most of the times they're gonna tell you to a certain value is input, which is going to be the last value, just like they did over here. So right over here. So what you're gonna do is you're going to write code to total the number inputs. Right. So I told you guys the concept of totaling. If you remember, what we're gonna do is we're going to what do you say? Okay, we're going to start with a total. So total is going to be 0, and then we're going to input num. We're going to input num, yeah, and then we're going to do total is equal to total plus num, or you can actually just input num, right, and then you can do total is equal to num. You can also just start total at 0. It's your own choice, but I'll just do it like this. Okay, so total is equal to num, and okay. So next you're gonna do while value or while num is not equal to 999.9, do what do you say? You're going to total is equal to total plus num, and then you're going to do input num again, end while, and then you're going to output total, and that's 4 marks right there. Just the basic concept of totaling. Right, so you should know what totaling is. Okay, then you have the next question, which is counting. So same thing here. You're gonna initialize a counter variable. You're gonna make it 0, and then you're going to input num, while num is not equal to 999.9, what you're gonna do is you're going to check if num is greater than 100, and if it is, then what you're going to do is you're going to increment the counter. So counter is equal to counter plus 1, and if, and then you're going to just increment what do you say, and then you're just going to input num again, and while, and then you're just going to output counter. So it's literally that easy. You're just going to yeah, it's just basic counting. So that's basically it. Okay, so yeah, that's 8 marks right then and there. Then next up you have the next question. Give a line for each one of these statements. Let's just go over all of the statements. The first statement is assignment. The second statement is assignment, right? Because we're assigning values. The third statement is an iteration statement because it's a loop. The fourth statement is this statement is a selection statement. Then you have part of the selection statement, I guess. You have an assignment statement. You have another selection statement. Then an assignment statement. Then you have an output statement, and then another output system. So you can say that the assignment statement is going to be 0, 1. You can say that the selection statement could be 0, 4, and you can say that the iteration statement could be 0, 3. So this works, and that's what do you say, that's 3 marks right over there. Then the next question is identify errors. So there's 3 errors in total. Let's just go over all of them. So the list index starts at 1 and is an array of 100,000 positive numbers. Okay, so first of all, it starts at 1, right? So this is the first error. We're starting the loop from 2. Okay, we're starting the loop from 2. That's the first error right there. Now the next error would be okay, let's think about it. So the next error could be okay, well, again, no, this is not an error. This is not an error. My bad, my bad. This is not an error because we're already accounting for 1. This is not an error. My bad. That's my bad. So okay, the first error could be right over here. This is should be greater than or this should be greater than. Okay, this should be greater than. So since it's maximum, so we're just gonna do greater than. Okay, it's gonna be greater than. The next error. Okay. Alright, right over here it's count instead of counter, even though the variable name is counter, so it's count. So that's gonna be counter. And the last error is right over here. This should be end if. So the first error is on line 4, and the correction would be if, sorry, I'll just add a few spaces. Okay, if list counter is greater than max. That's the first error. The second error is on line number 8. So, and the correction is going to be if list counter is less than minimum, and the last one is on line 11, and that is going to be end if, and that's 3 more marks right over there. All right, so next we have question number 8. All right, okay, so in this question you have to write a logical expression. So first of all, writing any logical expression, the first thing you want to do is the output. Okay, so you know that it's the output right over there, it's mentioned it's x, so you're gonna write x is equal to, and that's 1 mark right over there. Okay, so the first mark is, oh my god, what the hell happened? The first mark is just by writing x is equal to. Now if you guys remember, I told you that in this scenario what happens is that you have to read the question. So there are 2 keys A, B and C. The safe can only be opened if both keys are used. Okay, so both keys are used, so means that we're using both of the keys. So I'll just highlight this, all right, and I'll highlight this, right, and the time switch is off, so this, right? So besides this, we know that what do you say, we know that, okay, so x is basically equal to these values. So x is equal to A and B, all right? So I told you guys, if it's a 1, we don't need to do anything, and not C, right? So that's basically going to be 3 marks. X is equal to A and B and not C. Since C is a 0, we just need to make it a 1. All right, so that is basically X. Complete the truth table for this problem. So I told you guys you can use fake letters. So you can say something like for instance, A and B, you can mark this as a what I'm gonna do is for A and B, I can just like write this as I'll just make this as D. I'll make not C as E, and this whole thing is obviously X. So first of all, let's calculate, what do you say, let's calculate D. All right, so sorry, so let's calculate D. So D will be okay, let me just, okay, wow, it sucks to use Mac. Okay, so D will be so we know that D is going to be A and B. So 0 and 0, that's just gonna be, I'll just remove all these so that we don't get annoyed. Okay, so 0 and 0, that's just gonna be 0, and then 0 and 0 again, that's just gonna be 0. Okay, then you have what do you say, then you have 0 and 1, that's gonna be 0. 0 and 1 again, that's going to be 0. 1 and 0, that's going to be 0. 1 and 0, that's going to be 0. 1 and 1, that's going to be 1. 1 and 1, and that's going to be 1. Next you have E. So E is just not C, so that's just going to be 1 0 1 0 1 0 1 0, right? And then you have the final value, which is just going to be this and this, so that's just going to be okay, actually might as well. Okay, so that's just gonna be okay, never mind. Okay, so that's just gonna be 0. Okay, so that's, oh my god, what the hell. Okay, so that's just gonna be 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 0, and that is 4 marks right then and there. Now I want you guys to notice something. X only equals to 1 when A is equal to 1 and B is equal to 1 and C is equal to not 1. Okay, so if you notice over here, the safe can only open, so safe can open when X is equal to 1, right? So safe can open when X is equal to 1. So right over here, safe can open when X is equal to 1. So X is 1 only when A is used, meaning A is 1, B is used, which means B is 1, and C is not used, so switch is off, which means C is 0. So the only time that X was equal to 1 was when the condition was fulfilled. Okay, so that's what this is. Can you please explain the first part of this question? Of course. So you know that the safe can only open if both keys are used and the time switch is off. So safe can only open when X is equal to 1. So X is equal to 1, it's going to be X is equal to, okay? So now the statement says that if both keys are used, which means that A is 1 and B is 1. So they said if both keys are used. So we're going to write A and, okay, we're going to write A and B. All right, that's 2 marks. Now for the third mark, we're going to, what do you say? The third mark says that the time switch is off. So that means that time switch is off. So that means that it's not C. So what we're going to do is, if it's a 0, I told you guys, if it's a 0, then all you have to do is do, you're going to do and, all right, so you're going to do and not C. All right, so not C. I'll just write a dash over here. So that's basically what I wrote. All right, so you just look at the statement, okay? Then you have, okay, all right, so then you have this algorithm, okay? All right, so I'll teach you guys the best way to do trace tables as well, okay? So let's all right, let me teach you guys the best way to do trace tables. All right, so when we're talking about trace tables, the best way is to put your finger on the trace table and make that finger follow the flow lines, right? So for instance, what do you say? For instance, if you were working with, okay, so if we're working right over here, the first step is to always start on the second line from the original initialization, okay? Or if it's initializing, then you can just, okay, yeah, always start on the second line. Okay, so whenever you're running an iteration, always make a new line. So the first one is that we're gonna set A as false, so we're just gonna do A is equal to false and B is equal to 1. Okay, so this is right over here. So that's the first step. Now we're gonna see if list B is greater than list B plus 1. Okay, so list B, so B is 1, so B1 is greater than B1 plus 1. So that's false. Alright, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make, what do you say? We're gonna make temporary list B. So list B is just 1, so we're gonna set temporary to 15. Then we're gonna move on to the next one. So the list B is list B plus 1, so it basically ends up becoming 17, and this becomes 15. After a while you start to notice a pattern. Okay, you start to notice a pattern, right? So then you have okay, so after that B is equal to B plus 1, so you're gonna write that in the next line. So then it becomes 2. Is B equal to 5? No, so you're gonna go back to the start. Now you're gonna do the same thing again, so you're gonna do what do you say, sorry, I forgot. A also becomes true, so you're just gonna write true. I forgot this statement right over here. Alright, so B is equal to B plus 1, so B becomes 2. Now you're gonna do the same thing. Is list B is greater than list B plus 1? So 15 is greater than 20. It isn't. So we're just gonna is 15 greater than 20? It is not, so we're just gonna do the same thing. So temporary value stores 17 and temporary value stores 15, and this becomes 20, and this becomes 15. Okay, 15. All right, then we move on again. A is again set to true, and B is set to 3. All right, B is set to 3. Is it just when it loops you go down a line? Yeah, when it loops. Yeah, exactly. When you enter a new iteration, these lines, you can say these lines signify iterations. All right, then you have the third one. So list third, is this greater than this? It is. So 15 is gonna go in the temporary. No, it's not. Okay, sorry. So is 15 greater than 5? It is. So it's just gonna increment B by 1. So B is just gonna be equal to 1. All right, and then we're gonna move on to the next one. So is 5 greater than 9? It is not. Okay, it is not. So again we swap this. So 5, this becomes 5, this becomes 9, and this becomes 5, and the temporary variable has 5. Okay, so in the end it's just you have to just follow the flowchart with your finger. Okay, you just have to follow the flowchart with your finger. Okay, and that will just guide you through the entirety of trace tables. Then after that you have, is B equal to 5? Yes. Is A equal to true? No. Sorry, is A equal to true? No, because we set A as false. What the hell? One sec. Is B equal to 5? No. Is A equal to true? Yeah, so A is equal to true, so we go all the way back over here. Okay, and we set A as false. Okay, and then we repeat the entire thing over again. So A is equal to false, B is equal to 1. Now we check, is the, what do you say, is 17 greater than 20? It is not, so this ends up being swapped. So this becomes 20, this becomes 17, and this becomes 17 as well. So eventually after a while you start to notice a pattern, right? So then again A is equal to true, so A becomes true, and then 2 happens. Alright, and then you just run it over again, and you'll start to notice that, oh, A is 3, 4, 5, right, and then you become it becomes false, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You notice a pattern that it's actually just sorting the array in a descending order. Okay, and you can see that at this point it's just sorted the array into a completely descending pattern. So I don't need to like run the calculation. I just know, okay, it's a descending order. You don't need to do it the same way as I did. You can just like, you should actually just go through, dry run the entire thing, but you eventually start to notice a pattern. Alright, so then you have 5, and that is going to be it. Alright, that is 5 marks right there. Describe what the algorithm represented by the flowchart is doing. So like I said, it's sorting data in the array in descending order. Right, so you can see that it goes from 20 to 17 to 15 to 9 to 5. Right, so it's basically sorting data in the array in descending order. Alright, so after this you have databases. Okay, identify the key that will be most suited for this. So the key that's suited is obviously going to be the unique key, which is in this case contract number. Let's just why can't I write? Okay, contract number. Alright, then you have complete the most identified appropriate data type. So in the case of contract number, it's just gonna be what do you say, text. Months is months is number, so we're just gonna write it as integer. Alright, so we're gonna write it as integer. End date is date slash time, so we're just gonna write it as date slash time. And then lastly you have sport. Sport is yes or no, so that's going to be boolean. All right, so next is select the sum of the select the purpose, explain the purpose or of these. Okay, so all right, so select some months from contract. So all this does is it accumulates the total amount of months for all contracts. Okay, so that's going to be the first one. What do you say? Yeah, counts sorry, adds all the sum of months in adds the sum adds gives the total number of months in all contracts added. All right, so that's basically what that something does. uh then you have the second statement, which basically gives you a count of news from contract where news. So all it does is that it counts the amount of contracts where news is yes. Okay, or you can say where slash where they're subscribed to news. Okay, so you should always refer to this so you can see the news service, and you should like refer to the question itself. Complete this SQL query to find contract numbers of the subscribers that take both the news and sports services. So this is going to be simple. The first one is going to be select. Okay, so contract numbers, we need to find the contract numbers. So we're going to do the contract number field. So we're going to do select contract number from contract, right? So that's already written for us. Where dash and dash. So we need to find where they take both news and sport. All right, so all we can do is we can just write this as news. Okay, so news, or you can also write this as news is equal to true. I'll just write this as news, and you can write this as sports. Okay, just write this as sports. All right, so you don't, if it's true, then just like write it as their variable names. Okay, you don't need to alter that much. Oh boy, this question. Okay, a one player game uses two-dimensional array grid. Just read this question for a sec, try to see if you can understand anything, and we'll start this question in like 3 minutes. This is gonna be the only past paper we do. Alright, so let's talk about this question. Alright, so like I said, you should always what do you say? Always decompose the problem. At the start of the game, the program places an X in a random cell not in grid 1 1 and empties all the other cells in the grid. So what we're gonna do is we're going to decompose this. Okay, so for the first step that we're gonna do is we're going to write this as we're gonna decompose the problem. So don't do it on here, you should do it at the back of the paper, so like at the blank page. So you can see there's a blank page right over there, you should do it over there, but I'm just gonna do it over here for our convenience. So the first step is going to be to what do you say, randomize an X value, right? So this is the first point. Okay, so we're gonna randomize an X value. The second step is to place empty spaces that are not on those coordinates, all right, that's going to be the second step. And the third step is going to be place X on those coordinates. So that is going to be for the first statement. Okay, so we just decompose the first statement. Okay, so let's do that first. Okay, so all right, so let's do that, let's write that first. Okay, so we're gonna get back to this. Okay, so the first step is going to be to initialize the 2D array. Okay, now in order to do that, what we're gonna do is we're going to first set all of the grids to empty, right? So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna make the entire grid empty. So we know that it's a 5x5 array, and they also mentioned in the question that you do not need to declare any arrays or variables, right? So we're not going to declare any array or variables. So what we're going to do instead is okay, so we're just going to initialize the array. So what that would look like is for r is equal to 1 2 5, and then we're gonna do for C is equal to 1 to 5. What we're gonna do is we're gonna grid. If you guys remember, I did this like the last thing that we did in what do you say? The last thing that we did in the notes thing was this. So if you guys remember, I told you guys the last thing was literally this, so you should remember. So RC is just gonna be an empty space, next C, next R. So that's 1 mark right over there. Then what you want to do is you want to okay, so next you want to basically randomly generate values. You want to randomly generate values until, so remember, in the question they mentioned that that is not in grid 1 1. So you want to randomly generate values that is not in grid 1 1. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a validation check instead. Okay, so what that means is that I'm gonna just real quick all right, so oops, okay, what the hell, okay, I hate using preview. Hold on, I'll try to see if we can get onto Obsidian. Maybe let me try to get onto Obsidian. Hold on. We're gonna do only one paper. I have something to do, so we're gonna do only one paper. That's why I picked out a hard one, the hardest one in my opinion. Okay. Let me open this question up in Obsidian. Okay, let's change OBS to Obsidian. Alright, and let's change your guys' screen to Obsidian as well. So share this window. Okay, so let's just go over here and okay, so let me just copy this question. Alright, so let's just copy this. Let's paste it over here, and then let's write the code that we already have. I'll just write the code that we have already for R1 to 5 for C1 to 5 grid RC is a empty space, next C, next R. Okay, so this is what we have so far, and yeah, okay, and then the decomposition that we did. Okay, so that's the first mark right over there. Okay, the next thing is what do you say? Alright, so okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to place an X in a random grid, right? So in order, oh my god, so in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to first need to calculate a random X value. So we're going to do that by using a repeat loop, because remember they said not in grid 1 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to do repeat until X val is not equal to 0 and Y val is not equal to 0. Okay, so all we did right now is we're repeating a loop. And we're just gonna continuously do this until we get a value that is not 1, 1. That is what we're doing. Okay, so after this, alright, so besides this, okay, so now let's actually calculate the random value. So we're just gonna, what do you say, just a sec. Okay, alright, so what we're gonna do is we're going to calculate the random value. So in order to do this, all we're gonna do is we're going to do X val is just gonna be round random. I'll bring this a bit to the right and I'll extend this as well. So random, right? And I told you guys the method to do this. So you do random multiplied by max minus min. The maximum is 5, the minimum is 1, so random starts 4. plus 1, right? And you round this off to 0, and you'll do the same for y val. And right there you have 2 more marks. So at this point you've accumulated like 3 marks. Okay, that's what you've accumulated so far. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to assign the variable. Okay, so we're going to do something like grid at x val and y val is equal to 0. Is equal to x. And that is basically everything that you need to do for the first 3 or so marks. That's the first task done. Now what we're going to do is that we need to understand how the game works. The game works in a way that we're basically going to start right over here, alright? And this is the player. And what we can do is we can move left, right, bottom, top, and so on and so forth. And by doing this, what we're doing is we're going to be altering our own position, our own x and y coordinates. And we're basically going to be moving until, for instance, if the x is right over here, and we're going to move like this, and if we stumble on the x, we're going to win. Okay, so we have 10 total moves. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to first of all, we're going to add a variable to count the number of moves. All right, so count moves, or let's just write moves, is basically equal to 0. Okay, so at the start of the game, at the beginning of the game, the number of okay, shit. All right, let's just, okay, all right, there we go. All right, there we go. All right, so the number of basically the number of moves at the start of the game will be 0, and the x position will be 0 as well, and the y position will be 0 as well. 1, because it's a 1 to 5 array. Okay, so it's going to be 1. All right, so that's going to be the beginning. Okay, the next step will be also we're going to use a flag. Okay, I told you guys flag looping comes in handy, so we're just going to set this as false. In this case, where the flag is just going to be the win, so I'll just write this as win. Okay, so we haven't won yet. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move left, right, and so forth by calling by entering the move. So what we're gonna do is first we're gonna write a loop while moves is less than 11, so until it's the 10th move, do, and let's just write end while. Okay, now what we're gonna do now is we're going to first of all, we're going to output a statement, enter your move, and we can say something like L is equal to left, R is equal to right, T is equal to top, B is equal to bottom, or down. Actually, let's just do down, and U is equal to up. Okay, so that's a valid output statement. Okay, now we're going to we're going to right, so what we're gonna do is we're going to we're going to input the move. Okay, and remember, oh my god, what the fuck is this screen's problem, bro? Okay, I'll just share the screen. Okay. Alright, so like I said, we're going to input the move, and remember the user can also enter lowercase, so we're gonna make sure that it's going to be upcase or ucase. Alright, so that just ensures that it's gonna be all capital. Next, what we're gonna do is we're going to check for errors. Okay, we're going to check for errors. So we're gonna do this by using another loop. Okay, and we're gonna temporarily set the error as false, so another flag. So we're gonna say that there is no error at the start. Now what we're gonna do is we're going to validate the move. Okay, until not error. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to alright, so the first kind of error that we're gonna look for is we're going to make some temporary position column. So we're gonna say that temp x is going to be x pause, and temp y is going to be y pause. Alright, so that we just made the temporary variables. Okay, so then we're going to check to see, or we're going to basically increment these values. Okay, so if, like, look, we're gonna make a case of statement, case of move, and we're going to say, so there's 4 possible moves, right? So there's L, then there's R, then there's up, and then there's down, and then there's obviously the otherwise statement. So if it's otherwise, then what we're gonna do is we're going to what do you say, we're going to mark error as true, so meaning that he entered an invalid position, so it's going to be true. So if it moves left, so think about it, if it moves left, then the index will be subtracted by 1. Alright, so the x index will be subtracted by 1. If he moves upwards, then the x and y index will be added by 1. If he moves rightwards, then it's going to be added by 1, the x index, and if he moves downwards, then it's going to be minus by 1, subtracted by 1. So this ends up being, so looking something like L basically means that temp x is equal to temp x minus 1. R is basically going to be temp x is equal to temp x plus 1. U is going to be temp x is equal to temp y plus 1, so this becomes that. And then again temp y, temp y. So this is just calculating the new coordinates after we and end case, of course, end case. This is just us calculating the new coordinates. Now what we're going to do is we're going to see if clicking one of these does not make him out of range. So for instance, if the user is on this point right over here, if he moves left, that's going to go out of range. So we're going to validate this. We're going to validate this by what do you say? So we're going to validate this by seeing if temp x, right? So we're just going to okay. So if temp x is less than 1, or temp x is greater than 5, or temp y is less than 1, or temp y is greater than 5, then error is going to be true. Else we're gonna set the official coordinates as the new coordinates. So pause, x pause is going to be temp x, and y pause is going to be temp y. Right, and we're just gonna end it. Alright, so that's going to be what do you say, that, and yeah. Next we're going to see if the grid, or if the user stepped on an x. Okay, so if the user stepped on an x, alright, then we're gonna basically find the current position. Okay, and we're gonna go out of the loop, by the way. At this point we're gonna go out of the loop, or actually let's just stay in the loop. Okay, we're gonna stay in the loop. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to what do you say, alright, so we're going to see if the current position, so let's calculate the current string is going to be grid with x pause, y pause. Okay, so that's gonna be the grid. Okay, so then we're gonna see if this is equal to x. So if this is equal to x, then that means the user has won. If current string is equal to x, then it said, as in the question it said, output you win. And what we're gonna do next is we're going to set the win flag to true. So we're gonna do win is equal to true, right? So that's gonna be the thing. Okay, so win. All right, now end if. Now obviously if it's not that, then there's two possibilities. The two possibilities is what do you say, the two possibilities is that the user errored or the user didn't step on anything. Okay, so let's handle both of those possibilities. Alright, let me just extend this and bring this over to the right. Okay, let's just bring the over to the right. Okay, so the first possibility is when we're talking about the user not stepping on an X, the first possibility is that it errored. So we're gonna check that it did not error. If not error, meaning that it did not error, then we're going to increment the moves by 1, moves plus 1, and end if. Alright, so that's how we're gonna handle this entire thing. Now, this entire thing, that's your entire game plan. The last thing to do, the last point, is to display a you win or you lose message. Okay, so if the user doesn't win, if not win, then output you lose, and that way end the game. And it's as simple as that. It's nothing big, it's nothing too complicated. This is the entire question. And okay, never mind. Let me just share my screen. It's over anyways, so yeah, this is the entire question. I don't get your for the random x square thing. Repeat for the random. Okay, so in the question they mentioned that it should not be on grid 1 1, so that's why we use a repeat, so that we make sure that it is not on 1 1. Alright, so you can see I made it x is not equal to 0. Oh, sorry, it's gonna be x is not equal to 1. Sorry, my bad. It's gonna be x is not equal to 1. Okay, it's gonna be 1. But yeah, they made sure that it should not be on 1 1. Okay, so yeah. Any other questions from this question? I'll send the code in the chat as well. But wouldn't that also stop it from eating either in either one of those rows and columns? No, because we're using an and statement, so it only works until yeah. If this was an or, if this was an or, then wait, hold on. Yeah, if this was an or, then your statement would be correct. But since this is an and, that means that if, for instance, wait, wait, hold on. Let me see. Yeah, no. That's fine. So this is, since this is and, it basically verifies that. Okay, so if x is not equal to 1 and y is not equal to 1, right? So as soon as something like 2, for instance, so 2 is not equal to 1, that is true, and 1 is not equal to 1, so that is false. So it ends up becoming false entirely. No, this is how you do it. Marking scheme as well shows it in like this, so I'm guessing that is correct as well. I can run this. I mean, if it's or, and let's take a random coordinate like let's take a random coordinate like 2 and 1. So it's gonna be 2 is not equal to 1. That's true. Yeah, but if it's or and you add a 1 and 1, so then that's gonna make this entire condition true as well, because 1 is, wait, what the hell? What the hell? Hold on, I need to run this on pseudocode pro. Let me run this on pseudocode pro. Hold on. What if it's the fudge? Uh, Hold on, I'll share my screen again. Okay, oh yeah, sorry. Okay, so the reason, okay, all right. So when we use or, what happens is that what do you say? When we use or, what happens is that the loop keeps on repeating. So if we have 1 1, for instance, if we have 1 1, then that means that this condition is false and this condition is false, so the loop repeats again, because until should be true, so it repeats again, which is why we use and. Alright, so in the case of and, 1 is not equal to 1, that will be true, and while 1 is not equal to 1, that will be true, and hence the loop exits. If it was or, if it was or, if it was or, then what would have happened is that if you entered 1 1, then this would have been false, and this would have been false, so the overall condition would have become false, which means that the loop would have repeated. So it was and. Alright, so it was gonna be and. Do you get it? It got distracted again. Oh man, I hate macOS now. But do you get the point? Still don't end screen. Okay, look. The reason we used and was because if you put in 1 1 in or, okay, let's just assume that it's true for or. Let's put in 1 1. Is 1 not equal to 1? That is false. Okay, so this becomes false. Alright? Now is, okay, it got killed again. Oh my god. I'll just send screenshots. I think my computer finally gave up. Alright, so 1 not equal to 1. 1 not equal to 1. Alright, so in the case of alright, so let me just send it in the chat. Okay, my thingy got killed. Okay, so if you look at it as an or, alright, I sent it in the chat. You can see that it's 1 is not equal to 1. Okay, so overall the condition becomes false and false. Okay, the condition becomes false and false or false, so the final condition will become false. I hope you're looking at the edits. Okay, the final condition will become false. Okay, and since it's false, the entire loop's gonna go on and on and on again. Okay, so since it's false, alright, so the entire loop will go on and on and on again. Alright, that's what's happening. Okay, since it's false, because it's false, and that means the entire loop will happen again. Okay, and when we use and, in the case of and, x val is not equal to 1 and y val is not equal to 1, then in that scenario the only case in which the loop exits is when it's not equal to 1. You can think of it as like not x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 1. Alright, so you can think of it as not x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 1. So that just becomes x is not equal to 1 and y is not equal to 1. I'll try screen sharing, but there is nothing to screen share. We're practically done anyway. So yeah, okay. So like I said, in the case of an or, if you enter the coordinates 1 and 1, this whole thing would have become false, and this whole thing would have become false, which means this entire condition would have become false, which means that the loop would have been run again. Okay, however, if we have something like x val is not equal to 1 and y val is not equal to 1, in that scenario, if 1 is not equal to 1 and 1 is not equal to 1, this would have become false. Sorry, this would have become false, and this would have become false, and hence the loop would have exited. And if you had another thingy, like for instance, you had something like 2 comma 1, then what would have happened is that you would have had something like oh my god, it ended again. But if you had something like, I'll share all my windows. Okay, I'll just share all my windows. Okay, so but if you had something like this, like 2 is not equal to 1 and 1 is not equal to 1, then that would have led to a true. This would have led to a what do you say? So this would have been a true, and this would have been a. Wait. What the hell? Honestly, you're right. I think you're right. Just write not x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 1. Just write it like that. Simple. Just write it like that. Simple. Just write it as not x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 1. You can just write it like that. So, yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a fault in my error. Just write it like that. Do I need to declare any variables I make myself? Depends on the question. If the question says do not declare, you don't need to declare. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? What is step? I have no clue. That's an AS thing. I don't think that's an IGCSE. Why is it random times 4? Because in order to find the random integer, I told you guys the formula for that would be random parentheses multiplied by max minus minimum. So the maximum that you can get is 5. The minimum is 1. So 5 minus 1 is 4. So random multiplied by 4. I'll upload the notes and everything after this call. I'll get my hard drive and it should be all uploaded within the next hour. Just look at the pin in the CS comments. And yeah, I think we can officially conclude the entire May-June 2024 session. 2025, what the fuck? It's 2025, yeah. It was a fun session, fun thing. But yeah, we're gonna conclude the session. I'm gonna be back next year. We'll see you guys next year. Well, not you guys. It's gonna be another entirely new batch of people. It's insane. It's insane. It's actually genuinely insane. Last year it was just some random people. Does not mean win. It completely registers with win and false. I'm unsure about what you said. SGEGG. I'll share the notes right now. Actually, in the chat. You guys can I'll export them right now for you. No worries. I'll export them right now and I'll add them like later. Let me just get my hard drive. I'll do it right now. Will you do CS for us when we are giving AS? Oh boy, I don't think I'm gonna do sessions for any AS subject. It's not like I'm scared of AS or anything like that. It's just I find AS to be very boring and long. Yeah, it sucks. AS sucks. I have my math P3 tomorrow and I haven't done a single word because it's so boring as hell. And I know, okay, I can just like do it without studying either way, so we're good. What does it mean if you're not a variable? Yeah, it just means like if you have not x, then that just means when x is equal to false. So if, yeah, that's just a way of writing a condition. How much do we need to get an A star? Honestly, man, just give the paper tomorrow. Worry about the grade after you give the paper. You should not worry. You should not be worrying about the grade right now. Just worry about it after you give the paper. Simple as that. Okay, P2. Lecture 4, chapter 7, chapter 8, past paper, and we're gonna create a notes folder. Or actually, let's just rename this to chapter 8, and we're gonna create the notes folder. So that's just gonna be save. I'll send you the notes right now. Okay. Chapter 8. Export and save. Alright, where is Discord? Alright, so where is it? IGCSE lectures P2 notes chapter 4 lecture 4. Okay, I sent the notes. You can find the others on the hard drive. So yeah, I'll just send all 4 of them actually. There you go. There's, oh, never mind. There's a 30-second slow mode. Anyways, that's lecture 5 past paper MJ 24. I'll close the recording. I'll see you guys next year.